So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Diksha, and I'll be your host for this event. We are excited to have you all here today to learn about Jolly Phonics. And whether you are seasoned professional or new to this subject, we believe that you will find valuable insights and information that will help you in your personal and professional growth. The co-author of Jolly Phonics, Lloyd, will be sharing her knowledge and experience with us during this webinar. So in this webinar, we seek to provide you information that you may apply to your students or with your own child. So we also want to make sure that you have an interactive and engaging experience. So please don't hesitate to participate and ask questions. I would like to mention that we will have a 10 minutes question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So please post your questions in the chat box. So in order to prevent the disruption to session's flow, we have also put everyone on mute. So after this webinar, there will be 2-minute quiz and that you must take to receive your certification of participation. And only those who registered, attended, and took part in the quiz will be awarded certificates. So without further ado, let me introduce Sue, our speaker. So I want to give a few details about her. Sue Lloyd is a British educational author, teacher, and co-author of Jolly Phonics program, which is a popular and effective method of teaching children to read and write using synthetic phonics. Before co-authoring Jolly Phonics, Sue worked as a primary school teacher in London and later became a lecturer in education at the University of Cambridge. She has also worked as a teacher, trainer, educational consultant, both in UK and internationally. Sue Lloyd co-authored the Jolly Phonics program with her colleague Christopher Jolly in 1980s. The program is now used in schools around the world and has been translated into many different languages. Sue has also written several other educational books, including the Jolly Grammar series. She has received numerous awards for her work in education, including the UK Literacy Association prestigious Author Award in 2019. Her work has had a profound impact on teaching of reading, writing in the UK and around the world, helping countless children to develop the skills they need to succeed in school and beyond. I will now turn the rein over to you, Sue.
Thank you for that introduction. What you forgot to mention is that I'm not very good at technology because I don't know what I have done on the screen today, but I can't see myself, I can't see chat, I can't see anything of that. I can just see my PowerPoint, but I believe you can see me, so so forgive me, please. You know, I'm really, you actually said that I went to Cambridge University, and that isn't accurate. When I went to learn to be a teacher, they didn't have teaching in universities then. You didn't learn through the university, and I went to an ordinary teacher training college. Okay. So I'm not as good as that. But I think what it does show is that actually experience in the classroom counts enormously. Research is very important for testing the effectiveness of a program and so on. But also the experience of teachers counts a lot, especially if they also measure the effectiveness on standardized reading and standardized spelling tests. And this is what happened with us. I went to a school, and at the school, they taught with whole words and memorizing, which was the typical way then. And then our head of department thought that it was, you know, a bit of a worry because there were some children who weren't learning very well. And so she looked at those children further up in the school, and she noticed that the good readers, they always worked the words out when they came to one they didn't know. But the poor readers, they didn't. They either guessed or they didn't say anything. And so she thought, well, why? And then she looked at their letter sound knowledge and she realized that they just did not know the letter sound correspondences. So she thought, well, okay, let's change so that we teach the letter sound correspondences right from the beginning and how to work the words out for reading. And when we did this, we had a huge improvement. There were 3 of us teachers, 3 classes, so it's a big school, and we all found the same, huge improvement. So in the first term, no reading books, just learning the letter sound correspondences and how to work the words out. And then later on standardized reading tests, this showed up this improvement. It was a huge improvement. The children were at least a year ahead of chronological age. Then after that, we had another experience that really opened my eyes. We were asked to do a research project, and the researcher thought that it was important to teach the children to hear the sounds in words before you actually teach them to read and write. And although his ideas were a nightmare for teachers in a big classroom, it was all tape recorders, and they were very primitive in those days. And so you can imagine you had to keep putting a child on the tape recorder, and then they had to listen for sounds and so on. Well, we had to abandon that. But what it did teach us was that it was important for the children to be able to hear the sounds in words. And so we simplified it. Well, I simplified it. And so I said, well, look, children, you want to write the word dog? Listen, d-o-g. And by doing a bit of that every day, we tuned them in so that they could hear the sounds. And of course, I look back and I think, well, you know, we were daft, because if you can't hear the sounds in words, you cannot crack the code, which is based on the sounds. So there was the lesson. And again, the spelling results went up as well when we introduced this. So it taught me that method is important, and it taught me that it's important to measure your effectiveness. Now, many of you might see this and you might know that this is the simple view of reading. And I like this particularly because it says the 2 things that are very important. One here is that the children have good language skills. They've got to be able to speak the language and have a good vocabulary. And then the other across here, the word recognition. The other skill is being able to work out the words and being able to read words easily. So the actual mechanics of reading. So here we have the 2 things. Now, if you're good at language and you're good at reading the words, you'll be very good at reading. You'll be in this quarter. But the other way, if you're poor at language, you don't know the language very well, and you're poor at reading the words off the page, you're going to be a very poor reader. And actually, if you've got one of them, you might be good at getting the words off the page, but poor at language, you'll still be a poor reader. And if you're the other way, if you're good at word recognition, you can get the words off the page and your language is poor. So you'll be a poor reader then. Very important to understand. We need to develop the language and we need to develop the ability to work the words out on the page. And Jolly Phonics is mostly about the phonics, working the words out. But of course, it is important that the language is developed, and through stories and through the teaching, by just conversing and talking about words, the actual ability to speak the language improves. And I do like to think of this is a code, the English alphabetic code. Look at other codes. We wouldn't dream of asking children to work 26 minus 18 out without understanding what 26 represents and what 18 represents. So you don't start with equations, you start with working out from the, learning how the notation works. So, and that's the same with music or the alphabet or the Morse code. It doesn't matter. A code needs to be taught very systematically and carefully, from simple to more complex. So why is our English code so complicated? And that's one of the problems. And I think that probably is why somebody some time ago decided that teaching through the code was too hard, and it's much better to tell the children what the words are and get them to memorize. And that's when things started to go wrong. The reasons why it is complicated is because we have 44 sounds, but only 26 letters. So that's a snag. It means that sometimes we have to put 2 letters together, sometimes 3 or 4, but we have to have more than one to represent those extra sounds. And then another thing, we've had a lot of influence from other countries, and we seem to be particularly good at embracing their thinking as well, their words and their way of doing things. And that means that we've got an awful lot of influence from the Celts, Romans, Anglo-Saxons, Vikings, and French, especially as they invaded us. Look at this complexity. We have this CH, and it usually represents the ch sound, like in chop and chips. Straightforward. But because of the Greeks, we've got their influence, and some words, the CH has a k sound, like in Christmas and chemist. And then we had the influence from the French, and their CH, like in champagne and machine, has a sh sound. So 3 things to learn for the CH. So that's more learning, which is adding to the complexity. And then lastly, we printed our dictionary 2 centuries ago, and once it went down in print, we haven't changed it. And so we've got all these words that don't really, the code has become more and more complicated because of it. Let's look at this. I mean, if only we used one way of representing a sound, we would be much easier. But look at the different ways we've got of representing the A sound. The one that we do first in Jolly is the AI as in rain. But there are 2 other common ways. Look, the split digraph, the A hop over E, like in the word date, and the AY, like in say. So that's another 3 lots of learning. But it's not finished there, because we've even got more ways of representing the A sound. Luckily, there are not so many of these ways. So we do the main ones first, and then gradually as they go along, we do some others. So look at this letter here, the letter A. That usually has an A sound in the code, nearly always, but sometimes it says A for some reason. So here, apron, angel. EI, that can be A, like in faint and veil. And then EY, they and grey. 4 letters here, EIGH, another A is 8. And ET, there's a bit of French influence, like in ballet and sorbet. Then EA, now this EA usually says E. It sometimes says E, like in dead and bread. And here it is saying A. Luckily, there are only the 3 words, but it's another complexity. And there's the AIGH, as in the word straight. I think it's the only one. So you see, we have the very common ones and then the less common ones, but they still make the learning to read and decode more difficult, which is why it needs to be very structured and carefully worked out, which is what has happened with Jolly Phonics and the program. You can see this code and you can have access to this. Here's this A again. And the green ones are the ones that we introduced, the letter sounds we introduced first of all. So there's that AIA. And then we get the other 2 that come in the same year, the split digraph and the AY. And then the less common ones all along there. So you can see the English alphabetic code is a stumbling block, but it means that you need to actually do your teaching more carefully and more systematically from the very simple and then build up to the more complicated. We have a new handbook out and there's a new alphabetic code chart there that you might be interested in. Have a look at another thing that makes it difficult. Working out the words. Now, some words are lovely and straightforward, and you can work them out every time, which is great. And of course, we do those first of all, so that we don't disturb the children. We give them the simplest first, and then we tell them about the difficulties a bit later. So here we've got the at cat, straightforward. A bit longer word, but straightforward. Invent. Now we go into a digraph here. We've got the brain. Then there's another bit longer word with digraphs. Shampoo. And then an alternative spelling of the I. Brightly. So if you've got the knowledge, you can work all those words out beautifully. Then we come to the snag side. Chemist. Well, if you give a child this, they will think in the beginning that's going to be a ch, but if they know it could be k, if the ch doesn't work, they try the k, and so they learn to work out chemist. And so, once you've got the knowledge, it's straightforward. You've got to try this or that or even another. Then we've got the word doctor. Now, if you sound this out, you go doctor. No, we don't usually say doctor. We say doctor. We swallow the end. It goes, Now, this little swallow is called a schwa, and it's a swallowed vowel, and we have an awful lot of them in English. In fact, it's the most common sound that we use, a swallowed vowel. So, but if children read doctor, if they've got doctor in their vocabulary, then they will easily adjust to it. Then we have a word like woman or even woman. What's that? Well, that's a bit difficult to get woman from, but if the context is there, they might just about twig into that, but otherwise they will have to be told. Then we've got one that's here. We've got read, or is it read? Because this EA can go E or E. And actually adults don't know which it is until you actually have a context. You're reading it in a sentence, and then you have to make the decision, is it read or read? And then this last one, choir. Well, there are a few outrageous words, and this is one of them. This ch, it's not gone ch or k or sh, it's gone qu. And then this oi is going aya, and then the So only the is sensible. So, these ones just have to be dealt with as the child meets them or as a teacher meets them. And so it shows it is difficult. But, once they've got the first year of Jolly and they are good at blending and they've got all those letter sound correspondences, they will adjust to these difficult ones relatively easily if they have them in their vocabulary. So Jolly Phonics is a systematic synthetic phonics program. This is the research term for this type of teaching. And synthetic doesn't mean artificial. It means put together, blend, segment. You're working the words out, synthesizing. We begin with the alphabetic code from the beginning. We offer a structured step-by-step multisensory, because that helps the children who've got different ways of learning to take it on, but it also keeps it active and more fun in the approach. And we avoid asking children to read words that they cannot decode, because we haven't given them enough letter sound knowledge in the beginning. Once they've got that fluency and it's going, you're going to have no problems. This slide I like because actually you can see at a glance everything that you have to do for teaching reading. And here you can see these are the letter sounds on the right-hand side in a chart that introduce the letter sounds that we introduce in Jolly Phonics in the first term. In the pupil book one, which I'm talking about today, we introduce this pinky orange one, the 42 letter sound correspondences, and some tricky words. But by the time you get to the end, if you've got knowledge of all these letter sounds, And as you go along, you learn to blend those words and segment the words that use those letter sounds. So by the time you get to more oddities, you are very fluent at working words out. This word bank, which I have to say is the most useful book going, because in that book, I provide the words for you so that you have them at your fingertips, so you can do plenty of blending practice. And of course, when words have been blended a few times, they become known and then they can be read instantly. And that's the skill that you're looking for. Get them to be able to read the words straight away after blending them when they come to a new one that they've never seen before. If a child keeps blending everything, encourage them not to do that. Encourage the whole class not to do that. Try and get to say the words straight away. Look at this research here. Now they can do scans of the brain, and they've scanned a child that was struggling, and they noticed that the right hemisphere was much larger because that's where the memorizing words are stored. It was much larger. Then the child was struggling, couldn't remember any more words, and the whole thing went wrong. And so they gave the child a good synthetic phonics teaching. And the interesting thing was, when the child became fluent and good reader, because they understood the code and they could work the words out, then the left hemisphere of the brain got larger and the right went smaller, because the left hemisphere is where the words are stored. The decoding takes place in that left hemisphere. And here there's a link to an article that you'll find very interesting by researcher Kerry Hempenstall. Very important. So you understand why it is important to always do decoding for reading and not memorizing whole words. So there you are. That's what you need. If you get them good at all those letter sounds and those tricky words, and they're fluent at blending and fluent at segmenting and writing, you will have a very good pupil. Here are the materials that we have. We've got 3 lots and they all teach the same thing. There's our new phonics handbook that's got even more information in it, and it's got photocopiable materials. So that's one. Here we've got the teacher's book, because people asked us for pupil books. Teachers said they'd like pupil books, and so we developed the teacher's book and 3 pupil books for the first year. And it's the pupil book one that I'm talking about today. But we also have Jolly Classroom, which is whiteboard software. So you've got all the teaching on a whiteboard. So if that's your preference, then that's fine too. It all teaches the same thing. So on the first day of teaching the reading, we have a style to the lesson, and we mainly teach it through a story. And in this story, the family go out, and then the dog starts to bark, and the boy sees what the dog's barking at, and out of the grass comes a snake. So it's a bit of fantasy. You can make the story as big or small as you want, according to your children. So we introduce this sound because a snake goes sss. That's the sound. And then you sort of explain to the children that we write that sound by going, and you show them the letter S, and they can form it with their finger on the whiteboard of the finger phonics books. They can see the shape of the little letter, and there's also the capital, although we don't do anything with the capital at this stage. And here we look at objects in the picture that have that S sound in. So perhaps the sun up there, or the swan. And there's a list of words here that you can use. So tuning the children in so they can hear the sounds. And here we've got a little mouse. Now the S sound comes at the end. So you're just tuning them and making them aware that these sounds are important to listen for. We teach the pencil grip. Getting the correct formation as well is very, very important. Auditory blending is not showing any words because we haven't got any words yet, but getting them to listen carefully. Can anybody see the s, n? And some children in the class will hear sun. And then you do another little one like that. And then also, can you hear a s in the word? This is for the segmenting. Is there a s in swan? Is there a s in boy? No, there isn't one in boy. So just getting them a feel for it. We have an action. So the action is the wiggling your hand like a snake. And that is useful because when you have to practice those letter sounds, the children are busy doing the actions and learning the letter sounds at the same time. Keeps them on task. So there's your finger, your pencil control, and it's the tripod grip. So you put the pencil between the three fingers, hide two of them, the three fingers, and the idea is that the third finger stops it falling on the ground, but the main two, the thumb and the first finger, that's where the power comes from. And you need to get these knuckles out so that make the pen move just by moving the knuckles. And we call these froggy legs because it's a bit like frog's legs. And that amuses the children and it reminds them to get their froggy legs ready when they're going to write. Then we have a song linked to the teaching, and I think most of you know about the songs. Very useful, especially if they haven't got English, because they can hear the words repeated and they can hear the sound, the pure sound. So that's something they could try and copy, even if the teacher hasn't got those sounds that well. So they've got access to the pure sounds. And then here's your materials from the Pupil Book 1. So here's your worksheet, and from the teacher's book, here you've got precise instructions on how to do the teaching. So it's very, very clear, very useful. You've got your storyline, you've got how to do the letter formation, the blending, identifying the sounds, such as segmenting, and then further ideas for having a bit of fun about in the lesson, perhaps making something with the children linked to that, perhaps snakes and things. So you can see in the worksheet, there's a picture to colour that represents the story. They've got the letter to practice with. They can see the formation and go over the dots. Here, where there's this letter, they can say the sound, but really this is where the words will go for blending. And then here we've got a little tuning in exercise for segmenting. So we say the words and we are listening. Is there a s in it? So we've got sun. Is there a s? Yes. S. Is there a spider? Is there a s? Snail. Is there a s? So yes, for all those. Tree. Is there a s? No. And you put a cross. So there you go. That's the tuning in. I mean, you help the children on the first go, but then after that, they know what they'll have to do. Then the next day, we've got the same type of teaching. So a new story, a new letter. They can show the children the formation so they can feel it with their finger or do it in the air with air writing. They revise the previous letter sound, which was, so you hold up the flashcards and they do the action. And then you tell the story and tell the action. The ants go up the girl's arm and she shrieks and goes, ah! And the action of the ants going up and down the arm. So you do exactly the same thing. You listen for the ah in words. You do a bit of auditory blending. You do the letter formation and identifying the sounds in words. So it's the same format, which children like, and it helps teachers as well. So they, but the story is different, and there's a lot of activity in the teaching. There's your sheet, same kind of thing, picture to color, letters, sounds to draw, the letters to go over, the action there, no words yet, and another little activity. Is there an a in ant, and which one doesn't have an a? The sock. Your instructions are all there. In fact, at the beginning of this book, the teacher's book, there's a lot of information about the teaching, and that's well worth reading and reading again. do the teaching a bit and then read it again, because you know, we don't take in everything on the first go, and so it helps enormously. But this is the straightforward on this right hand side. This is the page that will tell you how to do your teaching. And then we come to the next letter sound, the T, and they're playing tennis and the ball goes from side to side. T, t, t. And if you watch tennis being played, that's what you see. And that's the kind of sound that comes from the racket. Well, it doesn't really, but the children don't seem to know that. But it's a way of just getting them to realize the T sound and to practice it. Again, all the same things in the teaching, all written there, just the same thing. But now there's your worksheet, just the same kind of thing, same style, and there's your instructions. And now we get the good time, because this is the day that you can actually show the children how to work words out for reading and for writing, because they're both part of the code. They're the reverse of each other. So you put a word in front, the word sat in front of the children on the board or wherever, or on cards, and you say, look, watch, I'm going to work the word out. I'm going to say the sounds that we've learned. At, sat. And then you do it together with the children and say, let's do it together, and you listen for the word, remember, at, sat. And then you point to the letters and you let them have a go all by themselves. Now, some children will be able to do that with no problem. Others will be a bit bewildered, but they will gradually get on board with that. So that's the reading. We're teaching them how to work words out. On the writing, sat, you don't show the children the words. So if you put it on the board, you rub it off and you say, now, if I want to write the word sat, I need to listen for the sounds. Now listen, sat, sat. And as you say each sound, you hold up a finger and you do it for them. You're modeling it. Then you say, now I want you to do this with me. Listen, sat. Now call out the sounds, sat, and holding up a finger for each sound. That's very useful because it seems to help them master the skill, but it also keeps them busy, which is very useful when you've got young children. And then you ask them, now I'm not going to help you this time. Can you do it? Sat. And see if any of them can do it. There will be one or two that can do that. But of course, they've got to get used to holding up a finger each time. They've got to get used to listening and saying the sounds. So it's a skill that starts off a bit wobbly and gradually gets bigger and bigger. So, and look, you see, here's the first 3 groups of letter sounds. And you can see the order they're in. We chose this order carefully so that there'll be as many words as possible. And that's what you need to keep in mind. Have as many words as possible so that as soon as you've taught a letter sound, you will be able to ask them to blend and work out a lot of words in the whole class. But of course, in the whole class, some children are not good at it, and they'll then just copy the good ones. So be aware of that and try and then get the weaker groups on their own, or have a more able blender with a child who's not so good, and they do it together and they gradually get better at the skill. So there's the single letter sounds that they're taught first of all, the same teaching all the way through. And by the time you get to the 3rd group, a lot of children should be very good at blending words. In fact, most of them should be good at it, and only a few. So watch out for those few. And having words available like this is very useful. Is in the instructions, you've got the words, but this is when this word bank is so useful. You can see here, it says words for blending, segmenting, and dictation. And here are the words that you can use for any of those skills. When we do dictation, and the k sound, because there are 2 letters that represent the k sound. Now, the children won't know whether to use the caterpillar k, the kicking k, or the 2 together. So we tend to stick with dictation just to the caterpillar cur until we're confident that we know when to use the other ones. That comes later in the teaching. So there you are. So these are words that you could encourage the children to blend. You could blend with them. Don't be afraid of the longer ones. Just demonstrate it and they'll gradually tune in and manage the longer ones as well. So you can see here are words for blending only. Well, here we've got the words that have got the kicking cur in them. And you've also got the CK, that cur as well. So they can learn to read those quite easily, but not use them for dictation at this stage. Then we've got some more tricky words, kiss. Well, there's 2 letters. They've got to learn when they see the 2 S's, they say only one S. They don't go k-its, they go k-its. And then you've got little phrases as well. So you can start to have little phrases that you print off and put out for the children to have a little practice with. My best recommendation, it's the one that often gets missed out, is that blending gets not the amount of effort that it should have. And so the more blending you do, the more able the children will be. So here you are. I can't tell you enough times, have flashcards of the words. We've got them in Jolly. Have words on cards, which come from word blending boxes, which you can make. There's a link here and you can click on that link if you've got the PowerPoint opened up like this. Click on the link and you will get how to make these words. Very, very useful. So they can, as soon as you've taught the P here, you've got these words available for you. And then you can actually write some of your own on a little list of words. You could send the list home if you wanted to. So masses of blending practice is important. And of course, once they've been blended a few times, they become known. So in the beginning, they might go it, tin, but then you want them to go back and see if they can go it, tin, pat, nip, sap. So that's what you're aiming for. Plenty of blend. Then we come to the next group of letter sounds, and we've got a digraph here. And they have to learn that the letter here doesn't say a, and the next one I. The 2 together say a. So when they see that, they've got to say a. And it's no more difficult for them than single letters, so long as they can hear those sounds. So there we go, a. And then here, we actually join them, but you can get the program without the joining, the program with print letters, so we don't have joining there. But I like the joining because you can go on and it makes the joining much easier. And next time I'm planning to do the pupil books 2 and 3, and then I will show you what kind of writing can be achieved with that. Here, we're practicing the ones that have gone before, as well as a new digraph. There's your blending words. And here's a little new activity. This is a chain, and they need to be able to hear that it's a ch, a, n, and then put the a in the middle box, the middle circle there. So that's all explained in the instructions. And then there's the next lot of letter sounds. So you're going at a fast pace, but look, 1,600 suitable words available for blending. So with having them at your fingertips and providing them on word boxes or on lists or whatever, practice as much as possible. You're getting them really good at blending before you start on books. So here, for writing, dictation is the most effective way of getting the children writing, but it also revises the letter sounds. And so it's a good idea to start off dictation, just dictating a few letter sounds. In the beginning, only 3 or 4, and it's a bit of a mess, and they're not used to settling down, but the next day they'll settle down better. They'll have their paper and their pencil, preferably with lines on. I get more and more keen on lines. And just regularly dictate it, show it, and then when they've written it, show them on the board, and if they got it like that, they can give themselves a tick. So dictate letter sounds, and then as soon as they can hear the sounds in some words, you can dictate a few words, and then that can extend to little phrases. And then when the tricky words have been introduced, you can start having sentences with some of those tricky words in. So it's a progression, very powerful, and the best way I know of teaching. This is what it will look like. So this is without lines, but in my old age, I prefer lines. Here you can see the digraphs are joined. They're getting used to joining that way. So it's over the top and come back, that kind of thing, and little sentences. Then we get to the TH. So when we get there, the tricky words start to be introduced. So here's the tricky word, the. So that means that you can start to use the word that they learn. And the tricky words they learn by the is sensible, but the doesn't say it goes it's that schwa. So they have to learn that the, that says the. It's the funny bit is the at the end. So that's what they have to learn. Another little activity here, you have to listen for the sounds. This, is, that's 3 sounds, and color in 3 circles. And then you can write the TH in the circle where it should be. So there you are. And more instructions over here. You can see how the children are meant to fill it in as well. Lots of instructions, nice and straightforward. Here with the TH, you can see you get more words available for blending, segmenting, and dictation. They're from the word bank book. And then you can make up, write out your own sentences or put them on the board. So here we are with the word the at the bottom. The book fell with a thump. So they can then have a go at writing that. You might have to guide them with the double L in fell. So, you can guide them where you think it's necessary, but basically they should be able to write that relatively straightforwardly. Here you can put them on these sentences. They can go, and you can see these question sentences. There's a link here. You can find them through that link. There's some phrases as well, which you can see on the link as well. So there we go. And then here's the last in the pupil book. So the teaching has been the same. In this one, they learn the tricky words are and or. The are, well, the E at the end is doing nothing. That's the awkward bit. And the or, the AL has an or sound. So they have to learn that. It's another way of writing or. So that's to help the children with that. Again, everything has been the same up to now. Now we come to reading books. Now, some of these books you could give to the children earlier. It's possible, and you have to make sure that you've covered all the teaching. But my recommendation is to leave it. Make them hungry for a book, but also there's a lot of advantages. Once you have a book and it goes home, then you've got to keep finding books for the children. It takes a lot of teachers' time. You've got to, the parents tend to work on the board rather than on helping the children practice their letter sounds. It's just waiting is worth it. First of all, they could go on to just word books. So the simplest of all, we've got Read and See, where there's a new style, and they have to work out the word on the front, zoo, and then on the other side of the page is the picture and the answer. So the picture gives the answer, zoo, and you could also, it's got the dots of how many sounds, so they could also then touch the dots and go z, oo. So they're identifying the sounds. These new little word books are absolutely lovely. Several things to practice in them, but basically the blending, it will be the word that they can identify on the page, you know, a picture of it. But it's not just the blending. Also down here, we've got the little mouse and 2 dots, and here instructions for the parents or teachers or whoever. They've got to say egg, and the child has got to touch the dots and go egg, egg. So there you are. So you're practicing the 2 essential skills. And then you come to real books. So, and when they've got real books, they're a bit harder, but here you can make a choice. We've got the simpler ones, orange readers, or the more straightforward, but, you know, more complicated red readers. If the children haven't got English and there's their natural tongue and a good vocabulary, definitely go for the orange readers. If they're not as good as they should be, not as fast, you know, you just know some children, they've learned the letter sounds, they blend easily, they segment easily, they write. They can go straight on to these red readers. But if they haven't got the English, keep to the orange. But in these orange readers, the first 3 books only use the first 6 letter sounds, and those are usually the most well-known ones. So go for that. And then there are 18 of these books in the red level: general fiction, Inky Mouse stories, and Phonic the computer. And there's a DVD of the puppets, and which is very helpful for the children, and there's some puppets that you can buy. So and these stories always have Inky Mouse, and then Snake and Bee are in there, general fiction and non-fiction. These are e-books as well now, which is particularly useful, especially if you can show them on a whiteboard, because then you can do classroom reading, and which is a great help, especially if they haven't got the English as well, as if they're a non-English speaking country. And that way the whole class can practice reading the pages in the book together. It gives you a lot of scope and a lot of you can explain about the story, talk about it, and give them a really good understanding, even before it goes home to be practiced. It's a perfect time for developing and understanding the new vocabulary and English. In your phonic book 1, at the end, after the 42 letter sounds have been taught and the tricky words, there's some activity sheets. So here, there's a little word search, so they can practice the words and find them and colour them in the word search. And again, you know, they look at was, oh, was, that was, and that helps with the spelling, and it's the little trigger to help them to get to that awkward one. Much later in Jolly Grammar, they learn that there's a lot of words, when you hear what, you always spell it W-A. So, you know, there's things that are coming later, but at this stage, you give them tricks to try and help them with the teaching. And then here's a bit of filling in and writing. The children have to be able to read the sentence with the missing bit. The something is hot. And again, it's pie. You can tell them it's a pie if they don't know that. But then they've got to listen for the sounds, p-I, and write them in on the lines. A longer line means it's going to be a digraph or a trigraph even. So there you are, little exercises there, which practices the reading, practices the spelling and the writing. And here we think about what we expect at the end of our term, which is the time we expect the pupil book 1 to be taught in. But of course, if you haven't got English, and how much English is in India will vary in different places, but it may not be the basic language at all. And so you have to make adjustments. And if you haven't got the language and you want to develop the language at the same time as you're teaching the letter sounds, you can go a bit more slowly. I wouldn't go too slowly, because then they get bored because they can't, the good ones are frustrated. But I would, you could go down to 4 or even 3 a week, and then use the other days for revision. Again, of course, if you only have them for 2 days, you're not going to do it in that time. So you have to extend it there. But the secret is, remember what you've taught, and don't ask them to read or write words that you haven't taught them how to work out. And that makes it much easier. So the aim is to make sure they know those 42 letter sounds. They can read the word, a lot of the words that are in the word bank linked to those letter sounds. They need to be able to write those letters, the alphabet letters, correctly. They need to be confident at writing words, phrases, and sentences from dictation. So again, the first term, but if you need to extend it, that's fine, so long as you don't ask the children to do things that you haven't taught them. And you have an awful lot of words in there that you can use. And at the end of the pupil books, you get this little well done. And that's all the teaching and the tricky words, so they can practice with those and remind themselves. Of course, we all know that it's never quite straightforward. You take a class in, and this chart represents everything I've found out as well, that you've got a few, a little 5%, the darker green at the top. They just learn to read and write so easily. Then you've got the next group, a lighter green, 35%, well, with a bit of instructions, they will come on. Then you've got the orangey pinky. These children, if they don't have a structured program like Jolly Phonics, they are going to, a lot of them will struggle. And then last of all, the ones that are the hardest to teach, and these are the ones that the teachers should be aiming at most of all, those children have to have the structure, and they have to have enough practice. So you might think, well, if the ones at the top don't need this structure, why teach it? Well, first of all, when you teach it, the children go much faster, because these children who are memorizing whole words, if you were doing memorizing whole words, these ones actually crack the code themselves. They perhaps see the word mummy, see the mms, and then see the word man, and there's another there, and mouse, there's another and then at the end of jam, they see that. So they can manage with memorizing words for quite a bit, and then they start to see how the code works and the letters are working, and they actually crack the code themselves. Not many can do that, but they've got a bit of logic, a good memory, then those children can manage that. So what you're doing when you give them structure is sort of saying, well, you don't have to work it out yourself, the code, I'm teaching it to you. So teach the code to everyone, but be aware that there's always this group of children, the red ones, and people tend to think they're not so bright. I have known highly intelligent children in this red zone. So don't ever think it's linked to intelligence. What they do need is a good memory for learning the letter sounds and a good ear for hearing the sounds in words. But if they haven't got a good ear, a teacher should teach them to hear those sounds. That's what we learned all those years ago, and then they can do as well as the others. So we all, as teachers, know the children who are struggling, but we really need to, when it's code-based, we need to analyze what's their problem. Do they have a problem with the comprehension, the language, so they can read the words, but they're not understanding them? Then you've got to do more on comprehension. Or is it a decoding problem? Can't they work the words out easily? Can they read the words fluently? Or is it both? So you need to know where the problem is. Sometimes it's a bit of everything. If decoding is the problem, then you need to check the letter sound knowledge, because that's usually where it is, the trouble. And if they don't know those letter sounds, then you've got to teach them. You've got to make sure they master it. If their ability to blend words is poor, well, they need more practice. Practice in the classroom, practice with parents. And if they can't blend, or they're very bad at it, never give them a reading book, because you will just make life harder for them. I've never known a child I can't teach to blend. So, they can all learn to blend. Those that are in mainstream schools. So it's our job to make sure they really can blend and blend well. If it's a problem with the writing, well, again, you need to check that letter sound knowledge. Do they know how to write those letter sounds easily? Pencil control, can they hold their pencil and write neatly? You've got to watch that. And the formation, are they doing it correctly? And then this phonemic, can they hear that mouse is ounce, and use that to help them with their writing? Of course, writing is much harder, accurate spelling, because it's dependent on memory a great deal. So, you might be wanting to write the word rain, but which A? Or the word hate, which A? So you have to remember which A, but usually once they read a lot, they tend to start to remember which alternative A to use. And then if you want to learn more, there is a very good online training course, which you have to buy. And you get a certificate at the end if you're good enough. They do measure how well you're doing. It's a 20-hour course, so it's a serious study. And if you're really serious about wanting to learn it, then it's a very, very good course. And you can find out by using this link here and going and seeing what is involved. But if you want to learn other things, here we've got my website. When I got too old for going and traveling and training, I decided to make videos of everything I've learned. And here's my website, Teaching Children to Read and Write. And here's the link. So you can click on that. And there you go. You get the website. And here, if you look here, if you touch here, Teaching Children to Read and Write, you've got all the steps down here. So you can go to step 1 and click on Introduction 1. You get a video, you can watch it on the video. If you want the transcript, you've got it underneath. If you want it in a different language, like Tamil, you've got it. There you are, you've got the Tamil next to it, so it will help. And I'm gradually getting people doing more translations there. So if you do want it translated in your language, and it will mean putting in a fair bit of work, that is available. If you need help with reading and writing problems, well, here are all the causes. Oh, I should have shown you here a bit more. Here you've got other videos in that group, so you can see those. And then here you've got downloads, and there's lots of materials that are available. And if you want to see all the downloads, see, so here you've got the print letters and ordinary letters, the letter sounds in step 1. So it's all the same things as in Jolly, but you can see, and nothing is very special. It's just that I've done the work for you. And there are a few links as well. So very useful. Then help for reading and writing problems are all there. I recommend here preventing reading and writing problems. That's a very useful one as well. And if you go down to the bottom, evidence of effectiveness, you can see downloads, and there is some research by Dr. Marlin Grants, and I love this research because you can see that it's not just the average of the children, but you can see what the good ones achieve and what the poor ones achieve, and very, very interesting research. Here, if you want to add to your phonic knowledge, you've got understanding the alphabetic code. So, go and find out. Vowels, they're tricky. Understanding how the vowels work does help with your teaching. And then if you want to know about decodable readers, I go into not just our decodable readers, but other decodable readers. And then at the end here, there's bits about how we got into that. So that's just for interest. So it's full of information, and I recommend that you look at that. So let's go back to Zoom, I think. Am I with you now? Am I back to Zoom? Can you hear me?
Yes, Sue. Yes, Sue.
Oh, I had a heart failure then. Thought you couldn't hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, Sue.
Well, I finished.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sue. Thank you so much for such a wonderful, informative session. And if you may allow, can we take up some questions?
Yes, that'd be lovely.
Okay. Okay, Sue. So the first question is the ideal methodology to take up a lesson on sounds at different levels.
It's whatever level you go in at it's the same teaching.
Okay.
Whatever level. Of course, if you're teaching much older children or even adults, well, you follow the principles, but perhaps it's a bit babyish, the pictures and everything else. So you have to adapt there. But it's the same principle. And if I had somebody who came in that wasn't reading very well, I would then test their letter sound knowledge. And where the first one that they get wrong, that's where I would start. And if you have a little group of them, start at the one where it's where they start to fail, and then just go and make sure that you're revising and practicing just the same skills, no difference. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is, how do whole language work with phonics?
It doesn't. As simple as that. I mean, there are things in whole language which help with developing language and everything else, but it is based on a principle that was wrong thinking in the beginning. And whole language teaches whole words, and as soon as you do that, you're going to make it difficult for some children in your class and cause them to fail. This is the only way that you can get through to all the children. And that's how the code will, the written language is based on the code. So it's natural that you should teach the code. So I would learn the best things from whole language that help develop the language, but learn from us about the decoding.
Okay, thank you. So there's another question.
Yeah.
How to initiate phonics in upper classes to bridge the gap?
Well, I think you need to look at how good the class is at the letter sounds. I mean, I would dictate the sounds and ask them to write the letters, or the letters and the alternatives. And if they don't know this, see where they don't know. And sometimes I've had children come in and they had no idea about the code. And I would say, look, you haven't learned about the code. There's a way of working words out. Did you know that? And well, just listen to me and watch. And then I will show them how you work the word out. And sometimes you can see the light dawn in a child that's been struggling all this time, and suddenly they've seen that there's a way of doing it. And then you take them right back to the beginning and go through the program. Of course, they can go through much faster. Because they've probably got a bit of knowledge in there. They may even, know the single letter sounds, but, they go through the progression, because then they're practicing on words. If they can't read their books easily, take them away. There's no fun in a book if you can't read it. So I would, go back to the beginning. If they're, you've got to judge where they are and what would be the best way, where to enter it. But I say it must be following the Jolly order, only because we've worked out all the words that you can use with that order. The order itself is not highly significant. It just, you need some vowels in there because you can't make words without a vowel. But the order isn't. But if you're going to do it, follow the Jolly order, because then you've got the words available.
Okay. So somebody asked difference between diphthongs and digraphs.
Oh, they're diphthongs and digraphs. Diphthongs are more what you learn with phonetics.
Okay.
And actually in code breaking,
Hmm.
they just make life complicated. So I don't use diphthongs. It's sort of hearing that A has got two sounds in it. Technically, it's got two sounds in it, but not an A and an I, but two sounds. A. No, so I don't use those. So it's easier just to think of digraphs. Now, digraphs are always just two letters making one sound.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So thank you so much, Sue. It was a
Very
great
welcome.
session. I hope that the session went well for everyone. And also, all of the products are available for purchase at sareducation.com. For any kind of books you require, you can get in touch with us or email to us. And I just want to thank everyone for attending and participating in this session with such energy. And we will be holding a second workshop on March 15th for Fitzroy. So we are hoping to see you there. Thank you so much, Sue. Have a good day all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.